Hello and welcome to the Burlington Mayor Show for the month of April. I'm Mayor Moreau Weinberger. I'm joined today by the city's communication director, Samantha Sheehan. And we are going to have a wide-ranging conversation on a whole range of recent City of Burlington issues. We'd love to, we're happy to talk about anything, do want you to know that you can, if you're listening live to this show, you can call in. We have a phone back on the desk here. It disappeared for a little while, but it's here to answer your calls. We'd love to hear from you if you're out there, and maybe the maketv can put up the. I don't see the number here, so maybe they can post it so that people can see that. But let's dive in, Samantha. It's been a busy month, really busy month. April is always a busy time in city government. In my now vast experience of 11 years, it's sort of like certain rhythms to the year. The January, February, it's a little challenging to get new work done because town meeting day is coming, and there's lots of focus on ballot items and city council candidates. That was certainly the case this year. We had this very long list of ballot items. We voted on that at the beginning of March. Then there's sort of this transition period, new council's coming in. Maybe you can get a little bit done, but then April, May, June, I've always thought of as the kind of busiest, most productive times in the municipal calendar before we got to get a budget passed by the end of June, and before the kind of summer. Things definitely slow down a little bit in the summer. Then you can get some stuff done in the fall again too before the holidays start. But that's kind of the rhythm to it. So this April has fit that mold, I would say. Where should we start?
So I think we should start with the State of the City. Happened a few weeks ago, and it was a great night. It was a great speech, and you talked a lot about your goals for the upcoming year. I think maybe one of my favorite moments was a really special intermission where you made an announcement about the Burlington Airport. Should we start there?
Yeah, that was a special night, a special event. What we did is share with the public that we intend to rename the Burlington International Airport the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport, recognizing the senator's really remarkable career. 48 years in the Senate, one of the longest Senate careers anyone has ever had, more than 17,000 votes. He's done so much to change the face of Vermont. And one of the things I particularly like about this is that I think maybe something people don't realize is he has been really quite focused and committed to the airport throughout those 48 years. He has long been a member, of course, of the Appropriations Committee, and that committee is very important in terms of federal investment. The federal government does a lot of investment in airports, and he's been able to make sure that Burlington gets at least its fair share of that investment. And he really did more than that. He was instrumental in JetBlue coming here in the 1990s, which was a really key moment for the airport becoming what it is today, really becoming a successful commercial airport. There, people. When I was growing up in Vermont in the 70s, we would never think of going to Burlington to get on an airplane. Really, it was a very different airport back then. That's changed in significant part because of the senator's leadership. We're in the middle. His legacy, his impact in the airport is actually going to last in a really direct way, well past his term. In that the airport has commitments from the federal government for something like $145 million of additional investments at the airport, further terminal upgrades. Further investments in the homes around the airport to help with acoustic issues and to help with, there'll be weatherization efforts, and airfield improvements that will, in part, improve the infrastructure for betas, a new facility, new manufacturing facility that is right on the edge of the airfield, and that that was a kind of exciting part of last year, being able to negotiate that 70, 80-year lease with Beta. Wouldn't be possible, I don't think, without the investments that the senator was responsible for lining up. So it was exciting to. I think it's a great thing to be able to do, to recognize all that commitment to the airport, to recognize his long service, to recognize his special relationship with Burlington. He's a Burlington resident. He and Marcel are Burlington residents again now. And kind of topping off the substantive announcement was we had some kind of special guests beam in as well. That was a fun part of it, don't you think?
That was great, yeah. Chuck Schumer and President Biden and Marcel herself, who I saw in Burlington yesterday. Yeah, I went to get a sandwich.
Marcel is so graceful and has been such a part of the senator's service. It was the one downside of the night is the senator himself wasn't able to join us, but to have Marcel there to acknowledge it on his behalf was very special. And I think it was one of Joe Biden's best public appearances ever. It was an incredible video. Usually those things are kind of a little canned and it's hard for them to come off well. It was a great statement.
And it was a fun surprise to pull off for everybody in Contois, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
We did some other stuff in the state of the city that night. One of the big themes of the speech was a discussion of public safety and the new sense of unity that I feel around public safety, having had the big debate on town meeting day and nearly 2-1 vote against what I felt and many others felt would be a really problematic way to pursue police accountability and oversight with the Community Control Board. Excuse me. I articulated that night, and we're going to see that it was really important that in the wake of that, we move quickly to restore the level of public safety that Burlingtonians, have long enjoyed and deserve. There are a number of specific ways that were actions that are necessary, some from the council, others really administration actions to do that. On a council item is coming up on this coming Monday. We're trying to create this is a pretty interesting issue, I think. We're creating a new civilian deputy chief level position. So just one step down from the chief that will oversee all of these additional public safety resources some of the additional resources that we've created in recent years. The CSL program, these social workers that now work at the police department, the new crisis response team that we've been working on for a while and we are getting close to standing up. Those resources will report up to this new civilian executive. This person will also be responsible for coordinating with these other resources at the Parks Department, with the Howard Center, really making sure that all of these investments, all these new efforts are working together and that we're getting the best value we can out of them. So we are expecting the council to vote on that and us to be able to move on that in the coming months. Another, on the kind of administration side, we have been really focused on, I mentioned this in the speech, and I'm encouraged by what's unfolded since the speech. We are deploying more resources to the downtown right now. We really want to set a different tone in the downtown than we saw for parts of last year. There's certainly lots of great stuff that happened in the downtown last year. There was lots of great events and experiences, but there was too many times where we were not able to consistently provide just that welcoming sense of a safe and belonging place for everyone that has so marked downtown Burlington for so long. We really got to get back to that. This enhanced public safety presence in the last few weeks has I think gotten the season off to the right start. We don't have as many resources as we need. We are still rebuilding, so it's going to be difficult to sustain this level of presence in the downtown, but I'm hopeful that getting started this way is going to have some enduring positive impacts this year.
And in the speech you talked about Burlingtonians really showing where their commitments and values and where there was clear consensus across the community, not just on public safety, but also on racial equity through a vote that will make it possible for all legal residents to vote in local elections when, what was it, 9 years ago? Really the same vote went a different way.
Yeah, I think it might have been 2015. So yeah, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Back then it failed by, it was close-ish, but it was a decisive margin against the initiative. This time, I think it passed by about 2-1, right? And it, I think, to me, the fact that vote happened on the same ballot that there was this no vote on number 7, the Community Control Board, says to me that Burlingtonians agree with a principle that has really resonated with me for some time. I've been trying to articulate, which is that we shouldn't pit public safety and racial justice against each other, which I do think at times that some of the prior discussions in this community, you look back at that racial justice resolution in 2020, and it really said take resources away from public safety and put them into other equity and justice measures. And I just think that's not the right way to think about it. We need both. These are both essential things. They don't need to be in tension with each other unless you kind of set it up that way as sort of a budget struggle. And we've got to find a way to invest in both. And I think that's what we're doing now. After 3 years of debate, we have dramatically expanded our investment in racial equity. We have this $2 million a year from just tens of thousands. We now are making a couple $1 million a year of investment in racial equity in this brand new department. We by far the most robust office of its kind in the state, even more than much more than state government itself. And we, as we're going to be grappling with in the budget season ahead, we are going to be spending more than ever in some ways on public safety because we are expanding the way we're defining public safety and what we're trying to do, and bringing whole new kind of professions into our emergency response with social workers and medical workers responding to calls in the past that we would have relied entirely on the police to respond to. So it's I think we're making good on that concept right now.
Absolutely. Another big town meeting day item that you spent some time talking about in the speech is something else totally unique to the city of Burlington and the state of Vermont, which is the first science-based, voter-approved carbon impact fee.
I like the way you framed it up there, Samantha. It is a little remarkable that something so significant and that has been so hard to achieve in almost any other kind of jurisdiction in America that this is now about to be the kind of rules of the game here in Burlington. There's still an ordinance that needs to be created in the wake of that charter change vote. There was little controversy about it, and it passed by over 2/3 margin. What this will do is it will say for new construction, as well as for major buildings, large buildings, 50,000 square feet or more, of which I think there are about 30 of them in the city, that basically builders, here's how it works on the new construction side. When builders, when they are applying for a permit to build new construction, they have a choice to make. They can either come through with something that doesn't create any new fossil fuel infrastructure, in which case, great, that's there is no fee assessed. Or if they feel that it is just impossible because the technology hasn't caught up or something specific about the site, or for whatever reason, they need to have some element of fossil fuel infrastructure, some fossil fuel burning as part of the heating or other amenities of that new building, they can do so, but they will pay a science-based carbon impact fee equivalent to sort of the lifetime cost of that impact at the time of the permit. And it will be interesting to see how this rolls out. I think I think fundamentally what this is going to do is it's going to make builders take a hard look at what their options are when they're coming forward for a permit. And what they're going to find when they take a hard look is that if they go the electrification route, if they go the route that doesn't require fossil fuels and heats and cools and does everything else in the building through using Burlington's 100% renewable electricity, they will find that is very cost competitive in almost, in the great majority of applications. So, So, I mean, to get out of the weeds, this carbon pricing is something that I firmly believe in. A lot of the world, there's increasing parts of the world where there is some element of carbon pricing. It's gotten very hard. It is very hard to do politically in America, despite there being some interest from both parties in doing so. You often there's been a lot of indication of kind of policymakers sort of turning away from this, believing it's just not possible, and looking to other interventions that are not nearly as impactful and as efficient. And I think the fact that we were able to get it done, I hope, has some kind of broader impacts of people realizing if you set it up right and you talk about it right with the impacted population, given the level of seriousness here, it is possible to get some level of this done. So that was a long answer to that, but it's a big deal.
While we're talking about building, I think something we talk a lot about in the mayor's office, in the city, in the State House, which you've been to several times throughout the session, is housing. Definitely on the mind of many Burlingtonians. Speaking of upcoming ordinances, I think the City Council Ordinance Committee is going to be really busy this first quarter of the year with a number of zoning changes coming forward. So what did you lay out for next steps for housing?
Yeah, great. Housing is one of our biggest challenges. It affects, it's a challenge that is sort of the root cause of many other challenges, the way I see it. It's obviously directly related to the homelessness and the challenge that so many young families, so many members of our community have trying to buy a home, trying to get started. The low vacancy rate is a huge problem for the renters, and we are big majority renter community. So there are like the direct impacts of not having enough housing and what that does. But then it seeps into almost everything else. When you talk to our businesses about what are the obstacles that they face to thriving and growing, further investing, expanding, the top of the list is, and has been this way for years, and it's particularly acute right now, is that they struggle to hire because people who are considering relocating here or even just staying here really struggle given the housing market. I think our environmental challenges are in part housing challenges, in that the best way to be building to address the climate emergency is to be building in our developed areas, in our downtowns, and yet we've created this system of rules that actually creates disincentives for building housing where we most want it and most need it, and where people most want to live, frankly, in a lot of ways. So it impacts the climate emergency and our response to it. Certainly, I think it's one of the reasons we're struggling so much to be able to afford high-quality childcare, is people have to spend so much of their income on housing. It puts great pressure and limitations on what we can do on that side. So, I could keep going on how say everything is essentially a housing problem. I think from my perspective, there is an acute housing shortage now. It's a shortage that has developed over decades. We have, through well-intentioned reasons and some not so well-intentioned reasons, we have created this series of state and local rules that make Vermont one of the most difficult places in the country to build. And as a result, significant of that and some other factors, we have something like 40,000 less homes in Vermont than we need for just the current demand, according to the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. And that kind of gap gets worse each year right now because we're not producing nearly, on a statewide basis, nearly enough homes. In Burlington, we've been focusing on this for the 11 years I've been in an office, and we are making some progress. We are building more homes right now, almost 800 homes. That's more homes under construction than at any time in decades, if ever, to kind of set that, in comparison, set that, we had a whole decade leading up to 2012 when, we started this new focus where there were only about 500 homes built that whole decade. To have, 1.5 times that under construction right now is, I think, a sign of that focus and the fact that we have done things like get rid of unnecessary parking requirements, make our downtown permitting processes much more predictable and efficient than they used to be. But we're not done with this work, and we really need help from state government because of Vermont's unique system of having both local land use regulations as well as state land use regulations through Act 250. We need help from the legislature. We need them to be a real partner in this and focus on this. And yes, I've been spending a bunch of time, including today, early before coming over to the studio, we've been focused on this issue and hoping that there is action on this in the legislature this year.
In those conversations, we've also been talking about work that is now about a year underway in Burlington, which is this neighborhood code, which would accomplish a really significant, probably generational change in the type of housing opportunities that Burlingtonians would have access to in the future. You want to explain
great.
that?
No, I appreciate that. And you're right. Not just at the state level, the local, and something we talked a lot about in the state of the cities. We have 3 big zoning efforts for the year ahead. One is we're still working on and hopeful about a change to the zoning of the Trinity College, the former Trinity College campus that UVM now owns. There could be a lot more student beds in that area, and we are trying to get that done in the South End. We're trying to take a section of the South End where housing has been completely prohibited for decades and take a piece of that. And there's some decent thinking around parts of that, but there's a central area of that is almost entirely surface parking lot right now. We want to change the zoning to make fairly dense housing legal there in what we're calling the South End Innovation District. And then finally, really in some ways the most ambitious effort is that would apply to every neighborhood in the city is we want to re-legalize essentially older forms of housing that used to create a lot, used to be quite popular, people still recognize the duplexes and triplexes and quads and kind of row houses. That form of housing created a lot of kind of organically affordable, if you will, small scale housing throughout the city. And in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, the city, like cities around the country, this was sort of a national trend at the time, created a lot of new rules that essentially made those forms of housing illegal. And you can't build them today. And as a result, we've done some analyses that, there's like 1 acre lots out in the new North End where you have 1 house on it currently, and you could build maybe 1 more by the current rules. If we made some sensible changes that kind of consistent with this re-legalization concept, you could have 6 homes on that parcel with some very appealing backyard cottages that will be very consistent with the character of these beloved neighborhoods. This is something we've been working on with the AARP. This is actually one of their big national efforts, is to help communities re-legalize these types of homes. They know it really could have a potentially very big impact on older Burlingtonians, older Vermonters, older Americans, create lots of new opportunities there. I think if we do this right, we could create a lot of new home ownership opportunities. We know that, again, only something like 30% of people who live in Burlington own their own home, and this could help us achieve some of our racial equity goals if we to increase the level of BIPOC home ownership. This neighborhood code could be very consistent and supportive of that. So this is pretty exciting. There's going to be a presentation on this in May at the council, and we're going to do everything we can to pass this neighborhood code by the end of the year.
When you first became mayor, do you think that folks were as excited as they are now to come out to public forum and talk about zoning changes? Or maybe they were excited, but in a different way.
That's right. People would come out for sure, but my goodness, there really has been a sea change over the last 11 years in understanding that that these rules really matter. If we're serious about equity, if we're serious about home ownership, if we're serious fundamentally about the concept that housing is a human right, we've got to build a lot more homes, and you can't do that under our current rules. And it is amazing to see that there are now a lot of young people coming out. Clearly, my sense is very progressive, very, very liberal. Millennials, Generation Zers, did I miss a generation there? That are quite passionate about the need for change here. They came out in a big way at the Planning Commission level to support this South End Innovation District, and they also lobbied really hard on the elimination of parking requirements citywide, knowing the relationship between parking rules and the creation of new housing. So this group calls themselves Vermonters for People-Oriented Places, and I consider them kind of part of this national trend of YIMBYism, yes in my backyard, which is, there are a lot of negative trends, a lot of concerning things out there. I see this as one of the really more positive movements in the country right now, and it's exciting to see that start to have an impact in Burlington.
And what do we have, 5 minutes left or less?
No, I think we are in our last couple of minutes. So what else should I think we covered the state of the city. It was a pretty exciting week. A couple days later, the First Lady came and visited Burlington and visited Beta, which was an action-packed week.
That was exciting.
We will be, we're excited about a very full festival season and a lot of summer activities coming up, but maybe we'll save that for the May show.
Return of Juneteenth. Maybe have REIB here to talk about that.
That's a great idea.
Right around the corner.
So we'll be back in May. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight and for watching the Burlington Mayor's Show. We didn't get any calls, but you can always reach out to the mayor's office, and we continue to have weekly coffees every Wednesday morning. I'm there myself almost every Wednesday. Our department heads at the Bagel Cafe in the New North End, and we look forward to seeing you around town in the weeks ahead. Thanks, and join us next month for another edition of the Burlington Mayor's Show.